Welcome to this week's episode of Listen to Your Coaches. I'm your coach, Mike Wilkins, here with Coach Will Morrill. This week, we're going to discuss cornering, coaching, the similarities and differences in between. All right? So, Will, what are your initial thoughts when you hear corner and coach?
Okay, so obviously cornering is, the coaching that occurs during the fight and in between rounds in the fight. And I would even say we can kind of include the warm up and prep in that.
Yes.
Right? So we'll just say everything that happens on the fight day, it's the coaching that occurs there. Whereas coaching as a larger term and kind of how we're going to use it today is, in my mind, the development that leads up to that fight.
Correct.
And those are completely different skills with some overlap for sure, which we're going to talk about. But I think that's kind of a good way to just like start off and give some definitions to what we're talking about here.
Yes.
What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with like how they're the same, how they're different, what you do?
I kind of want to start with like maybe some overall base on it. So like the first thing I want to talk about is that they are two different things. So let's talk about how they're different. They are two different things, all right? A coach and a corner, not the same thing. Oftentimes, it's the same person.
Right.
Right? And it does...
There is some overlap.
It makes sense for it to be the same person.
Right.
But being a good coach does not mean you're a good corner.
Correct.
Being a good corner does not mean you're a good coach. Okay? And I would say that just like everybody and everything, you have some strengths and weaknesses in each area, and you're probably better at one than the other. Okay? So we're going to look at coaching as the development, cornering is like the action.
Performance.
Yeah, the performance of the action. Okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about how they're different, right? Like how is coaching different than cornering?
So coaching is a very slow process, right? Overall, it's taking someone from their current skill set to the skill set that they are capable of having and being able to implement in a fight. So this is primarily boring drills. We're just doing the same thing over and over. It's going to be a lot of explanation and slow teaching, right? So like I do a lot of like lectures. I'll be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. These are the details in it. Let's go. And then sporadically during those drills, I'll pull everyone out and be like, hey guys, these are some issues I'm seeing. This is how we can address these issues. Let's continue to drill. And then we add levels of chaos, for a lack of a better word. We take away some of the control. So for example, if we are working, a jab, right? Maybe we're just hitting a pad, and then we add a little bit more chaos where the pad holder is going to maybe hit you back if you don't get back to a good position after it. And then we add a level of chaos where, we're going to do jab sparring. So now I could get hit back. And then we're going to try to implement that same thing in actual sparring and then eventually in the fight, right? So that's kind of like the 10,000 foot view of what coaching looks like in my mind. And that kind of slow progression of, again, improving your fighter. Whereas, cornering is, I think the first thing that's really important is knowing what state your fighter needs to be in and being able to help control that state, right? Like in my mind, that's like number one. So during the warm up, is this someone who you need to wake up? You know what I mean? Is this someone you need to get amped up? And we talked about this actually in depth when I was writing that chapter in the book about like mental training. Is the and now I forget what it's called, but the bell curve of low to high arousal and how there's that sweet spot, and that's different for everyone. So I think that's really, really important, is like knowing what state to get your fighter in and how to get them in that state. You know what I mean? And that applies not just before the fight but also during the fight, right? So like for example, during Joao's, not his last fight but the fight before that, where last round we really needed to get him to move.
In the Ratani fight.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you and I discussed during the round, we're like,
the round,
we're like, these things need to be said to him because I know that if we touch on this, and this point, that's going to light a fire under his ass.
Right.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're talking about here, is being able to control that level of arousal and getting someone to go or pull them back. So you got someone who's all amped up and that that's just like too much. And we're like, hey, let's calm it down. Maybe we need to do these breathing drills. Maybe we need to focus on a specific warm-up, routine, something along those lines. So I think that's the most important thing about cornering, is keeping your fighter in the correct headspace, in the correct amount of arousal, because that's what it's called in, sports psychology. despite being hilarious. But
It's like one of those words that like gives me the ick.
yeah, you're like, I feel like I
can we
shouldn't
call
use
it
that.
something
But
else?
like,
Yeah.
dude, you know what's funny too? This is a tangent. I had a sports psych professor when I was at Penn State, right? And this dude, I think he was like a diver in the Olympics, or maybe he was an Olympic diving coach, something like that. Dude,
Either way.
all the professors at Penn State, dude, the guy who wrote this
Dude, your
book,
turn is hilarious.
yeah, dude, I have to do it with my whole body.
Yeah.
Dude, you should see. Anyways,
Which book?
This guy Zatsiorski,
Okay.
he was at Penn State when I was there. I had no idea until afterwards.
Wait, like he
He's
was
like a
there-
prolific.
Wait, was he there as like a professor while you
Yeah.
were there? Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's an old.
You were gonna be like, yeah, this dude was my classmate. I didn't even know.
He's an old Soviet dude.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And long way of saying, Penn State had like this like great kines program, and like I didn't even realize how great it was when I was there. But anyways, this dude, he's like this very like stern and stoic like old Russian dude who was this diving coach, and he's like, yes, the levels of arousal. And I'm just sitting in the back like 20 years old, like ooh. Anyways, that aside, I do think that's the most important thing as a corner. Then secondly, I think is knowing your fighter's game and knowing exactly what they need to do and then distilling that down like 80-20 principle wise. And I think this is what you're the best at in the world, which like, you know, I'm super confident in my cornering abilities. I think I'm world class at it, and you're better than me. Where we take everything that they need to know and like what is the smallest cue I can give you that's going to elicit what I need in the cage. That's where we start to get some bleed over into the coaching, but we can talk about that later. But again, I think kind of large view, that's kind of what I think is like the most important points. And obviously we can dive super far into detail on any of this. What about you? You got anything?
Yeah, so like just some like differences. Like what comes to my mind is like you know like coaching is like planning a career, planning prep, planning a practice, planning a camp, and executing those things and hitting those developmental markers during that time, right? It's outside of the fight. Cornering is just simply, in my opinion, what happens in the fight.
Right.
So some personal examples. I do not need to be your coach
Yeah.
to be your corner.
Right.
Right? It certainly helps.
Yeah.
If we have a relationship, especially if we're able to develop a language that you and I speak, I'm going to be able to speak that language to you better. I'm also going to have a deeper knowledge over, you know, what is going to work for you, what is going to speak to you. And I do agree that, you know, mentally it's important to know like, hey, what gets your fighter fired up, what cools them down, you know, what, like, to be able to guide them in the right direction is important. But I far lean to the technique. Right. So like,
And I think that's way more important too on the ground than it is standing up.
I agree. I agree. So like, you know, and so therefore, right? Like if I'm like, hey, like, Will, look for the Darce choke, like, you know what I mean, and
Right.
stuff like that. Like that's like garbage.
Yeah,
That's
that's
some
very low
garbage
level.
stuff. That's very low level stuff, right? Like I want to tell you things that you're going to be able to implement. The other person can hear me say it and not be able to stop it.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, hey, you've got your right underhook. Let's put left shoulder pressure in and circle towards the head. What is that dude doing to stop that?
Right, yeah.
Like it's just a matter of me telling you what to do.
Exactly.
Like, okay, all right, bring your left knee to the top of the head to clear out his right arm. Now we're going to slide our right knee across the belly. Let's keep our heel close to our butt so that way he can't bridge us off, and we're going to settle into our mount.
Right.
Very simple stuff. Like you can very calmly follow that instruction, and we have seen this happen time and time and time again
I've experienced it.
over hundreds of fights.
Yep.
Hundreds of fights of like slow walk through, right hand here, left hand here, right knee here, left knee here. I remember one of the ones that I'm particularly proud of, because I got a lot of credit from like our friends in the community on it. Like after the fight, they were like, "Dude, that was like really great cornering." We were cornering. Oh, you might not have been able to be in the corner.
The one
for
in
this.
New York?
No, it's Alan Lou.
Oh, okay.
247 fight. You might have popped for COVID.
Yeah,
On
I
that,
did.
was that one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But there was like, it was like a low crowd to no crowd, so like it was
Right.
very quiet, so you could hear anything. And Alan shot a double leg. He was in a guillotine, right? Like moderately deep, but like
Right.
I thrown enough guillotines on Alan that there was like no level of concern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he's very difficult to guillotine, which is probably why he has neck issues. So I know I have time to walk him through this, so I simply walk him through it. You know, I'm like, all right, bring your left knee to your left elbow. We're going to get our head some height here. Okay, we're going to straighten our neck. I want your right hand to follow the forearm down, find the thumb. We're going to peel off at that point. You're going to scrape your face across the ribs. Your nose is going to come to the inside. Once your face is on the chest, you're going to have right wrist control. You're going to posture up. There's going to be a clear opening for a right hand. And boom, 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 bang, right? Like to a T, right?
And also what's really important about everything you just said there, you said everything that needed to be said in a way that you can tell. So you're going to scrape your face across this. No one's going to mess that up. No one's going to be like, oh, get
oh,
space.
I tried pulling my head out. Like,
Right.
no, I didn't say that. I said scrape it across.
You said everything that needed to be said, nothing that didn't need to be said. You know what I mean? You weren't like, oh, you're going to do this so that this, and this happens. You know what I mean? Like,
or I didn't give any ifs.
Right, yeah, exactly. You're going to say you're going to do exactly this.
Right. So, and like, you know, it went down to a T, right? So like big credit to Alan for following that instruction. You know what I mean? But like, you know, like I remember, I think it was Chris Williams and Dempsey. They were like, dude, that was like great. And like, I was like, oh, thanks guys. But like inside I was like beaming. I was so like proud that they heard that and thought it was good.
Right, and the people that we respect thought it was good.
Yeah. So I was like beaming, you know. I was like, oh man, you know, it made me feel really good. Which again, I like to feel really good because that's a positive motivator for me, and it helps me, you know, like ideally you don't need external motivation,
right?
But I am certainly someone who does take from that. So because of that, you know, like. I didn't need to coach Alan in practice other than knowing that that I had the time to say that because he's not going to panic in this guillotine. But Alan also maybe needed me in practice to know to trust that. Yeah. Right. I have cornered some people who I do not coach. Right. And I have made differences in those fights.
Now, is this a secret or can we talk about what your greatest gift in the corner is?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. So... do you want to explain it or should I?
You go for it.
Okay, so when you are fighting, when you're in the cage, Mike knows your right and left better than you do.
I do. So that might seem silly.
But it's not.
It's way harder than I think. For me, it's not hard. I don't know why. If it's maybe just repetition, it just, you know, comes naturally or whatever, just like a weird, quirky gift.
I think it's a little bit of a gift, and also you do it all the time during practice.
Yes, I do it all the time.
So it's refined.
And I'm not 100%, but I tell you what, I'm not 99%. I'm higher than that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So like saying like, okay, right hand here, like, was it supposed to be your left hand? Like, what I'm saying is like, yeah, I have made that mistake.
Right.
Less than 1 in 100 times.
Oh yeah.
For certain. Like that's how little I make that mistake.
Oh yeah.
But where it gets difficult is like, you know, it's not my left and right, it's your left and right, right? And where it can become difficult for you as a corner, if you're going to use left and right terminology, is especially in my field of jiu-jitsu, sometimes you're upside down. Yeah. Sometimes you're backwards, right? Like sometimes you're facing the other way, sometimes you're facing the same way. Sometimes you're facing the other way and you're upside down, you know? So I have to put myself in your body. So like that's kind of like my little secret. And like, you know, I don't mind sharing this. It's not like proprietary information. Like you can use all you want. But the reason I think I have so much success with calling out the correct left and right terminology is I put myself in you, you know, like in my head, like sometimes, like, I don't know if you ever look over while I'm talking, but sometimes my eyes are closed.
Dude, I've seen that. Your eyes are closed and I've seen you do the moves.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'm like, cause like what I do is like, okay, let's say you're upside down inverted. So let's go jiu-jitsu just cause this hopefully is not happening in MMA. But like, let's say you're upside down, like inverted. Like I like go real quickly. I just go boom. And I like, in a millisecond, I put myself there and I'm like, left hand, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, boom, right foot, like bang. And then we're just down a path of success. But what I really, really, really think gives the success on it is I think it's a mental calming for the fighter.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not saying it in a panic. Right. I'm saying it I have a monotone. I deliver it very monotone and concise, right?
Until it's urgent. And then you build an urgency.
And then I build an urgency if it's urgent. But because it's monotone and concise, I think that the fighter and or competitor, if it's a jiu-jitsu, if it's a jiu-jitsu competition, I think it brings a level of calmness to them too. They're like, you know, like, and it's just not, I don't even think you think like, oh, wow, my coach is really calm. This must be really under control. Right. I think it's just like a natural, a natural like thing. Like I'm setting a tone like from the corner. So I think that's the way that I'm able to help the fighter. And on top of that, I do feel like in those areas, I am confident that I am telling you the right thing. Have I been wrong? Yeah, I have. But here goes the thing, what I think really makes that part of my cornering, and like, you know, I get a lot of credit for being a very good corner. Most people say being a good coach. Unfortunately, I'm a much better corner than a coach. But I am not afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a gift.
Yes.
You know? Because most corners, especially corners who have fought, are very afraid to be wrong. Because like, okay, like for example, when I'm walking out to a fight for myself, I may have a little bit of nerves, but my nerves are like minute. And then when I'm in there, like I could care less. Like it's it's on. And I only have to worry about my feelings.
Right.
When you're a coach, right? And a lot of people or when you're a corner, and I've heard other people say this, like they're like, oh man, I'm way more nervous for my teammates. I'm way more nervous for my athletes and stuff. And I am as well, but it's almost like you feel more pressure to be right because, oh man, I don't want to be the one that cost you this fight, right?
Right.
So what I have tried to come to peace with is I will cost somebody a fight.
Yep.
You know, have I? I don't know if I have yet, but I will. Yeah. I will lose a fight for somebody at some point in time. But what I am betting on is that I am winning you fights that you might have lost. I'm winning those way more than I'm gonna cause a loss, right? Like, okay, let's say I help 19 people win a fight that they were going to lose, and then I cause one person to lose a fight that they might have won. Right. That's I honestly think those numbers are bigger. I think I'm talking like
I think
in
it's
the
more
90s.
I think it's more like 1 out of 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, so like somewhere in between those numbers.
Right.
So, but it's my lack of hesitation that gets the information out there at the appropriate time in the appropriate manner that does create an advantage for my fighter.
Right.
You know? And if I hesitated to make sure I was right, to make sure I didn't make that mistake, then the information would not be presented in time for my fighter to use it, so I might as well not be saying nothing.
Yep.
So if I'm afraid to be wrong, then I might as well not be there at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's my gift. Is, you know, like I'm okay knowing that one time I've been wrong in situations, but I don't think it's cost anything.
Right. No.
But I'm okay with being wrong because I know I'm going to be right 99 times out of 100, if not more. Right?
And that allows you to be so confident and concise.
And I tell my fighters that, and I'm like, this is what you're signing up for.
Right.
Right? I'm going to give you great advice, and I'm going to give it to you all the time, and it's going to be money, right? And it's going to be on time.
I think that's also...
But there's a chance that something's wrong one time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so you said something interesting. You said, I'm going to give it to you constantly. And I think what's important, too, is that you give it constantly when they're in positions where they need it. But also, I think something that you and I do really well is we're not just constantly screaming.
Yeah.
I remember I just watched the fights this past weekend, and I saw Dan Hardy was cornering his wife, and they cut to that corner, and Dan and the other guy were just... And granted, this was 10 seconds. So I'm not trying to say like they're not good corners or whatever. But in that 10 seconds, it was nonstop. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Which we could talk a little bit about.
Well, it might be a time. Like there's times where we're like that.
It could be that. I'm just giving you an example off the top of my head. I'm not trying to say like they're wrong. Okay. But you and I have both seen corners where it is that the whole time.
Yeah, you don't have to.
It's not a video game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's not like if you're not saying something, they're just going to stand still and just like get hit. Like,
right. And also like maybe they're thinking things like, you know, we try to give them space when they need it, especially in striking. I think that's really important too.
Yeah. I know we call a lot less in striking and grappling. I feel like in grappling, I mean, just the sense of the control of grappling lends itself to having more like instruction available.
Yeah. And more direct. So like when someone's striking, like I might give a code You know,
Yeah.
I might have to edit that out, dude.
Yeah, maybe.
Whatever. But so okay, actually, this is a good segue. Do you have anything to add on to that? I don't want to cut off. You had like a real good
No.
stream there of like really
No, I just think
accurately.
that's some things that make a good corner.
Yeah, I agree, and also I agree. I think,
But
like,
if you notice, like, what value does that bring to a practice?
right, right. It means that when you're going live in practice, if you're cornering one person, they have a better likelihood of winning that practice.
Which the funniest thing about practice is I almost corner almost nobody.
Oh, interesting.
Like in
That is kind of
practice,
true, actually. Yeah.
you hear me being like, I might like look over here and I
Occasionally.
might be like, Britt, this,
Yeah, exactly.
Luke, that,
It's very
Armand,
minimal.
listen to the rolls, like, you know what I mean, like stuff like that, like, you know.
Dude, you know what's funny? That just got me thinking. In practice, like during sparring, let's say that, like, Lucas is getting ready for a fight. If there's something I want to see from Lucas, you know what I usually do during practice? Not always. I usually corner the other guy to exploit this thing that I'm looking
Yeah.
for out of him. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's interesting. Now I think about that. Yeah, I don't see you cornering a lot of people in practice.
No, I would potentially get into this about coaching too, and like areas to improve, and like we're so early in our coaching careers.
You are. I've been doing this forever. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean no, but we're
no,
so early.
relatively,
Like
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so like all right, you became a professional MMA coach in 2014,
13.
13.
Yeah, that's when I graduated.
Yeah, but when did you first corner? What fight did you first corner me for? Was it
Calderon?
Calderon? So
Was
that
that
was
14?
June of 14.
Okay.
I was supposed to fight December, I think, and something happened.
I don't know.
I think I
Oh,
got
was that
hurt.
when Khama needs you in the chest?
Oh yeah, Khama like fractured my sternum.
Yeah.
What a dick. Khama.
Dude, what a beast, bro. Khama is like, dude, he's legit from that old school generation.
Dude, he's
of
still
you guys.
fighting.
And he's still fighting.
He's
and he's
still
good,
fighting.
dude. He's
still
really
fighting.
good.
Yeah, dude, that was Khama. I hate him.
Oh, dude, I
Oh
love
my
Khama.
god, he's the worst. All right, Khama also on last week's episode we were talking about Khama tore my meniscus too.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah, he shot a low single on me, which clearly I was not
I was going to
expecting.
say, you were not ready for that at all.
No, the last thing I thought was Khama was going to shoot a takedown.
Yeah, dude.
That was the last thing I thought.
Oh, God.
He took me down.
Dude, that's awesome.
He took me down. All right. Okay. I don't remember what we're talking about.
Yeah, Khama took you down with a low single
Dude,
in
in
MMA.
sparring. Yeah.
Oh,
It was funny. I can't remember where we were.
we were talking about again you cornering versus coaching and just how.
Oh, you've been, and I'm like, we're young in our coaching career, and you're
Right,
like, I've been
right, right.
coaching forever. So yeah, you have been. That was the first pro fight you cornered. Probably
But
was
I
mine.
plan on doing this forever.
But
so.
was my fight your first pro fight corner?
Yeah, it had to have been.
All right, so you've been a professional MMA coach since. Well, I mean, that was just your first cornering. You were coaching me since
Right.
2013. So yeah, you've been a professional MMA coach for 11 years. But like
I'm
you're
gonna do it
33.
for-
I mean, another 20. Let's say you retire at 53.
Oh, zero chance. I plan
But
on-
zero chance. Well, let's say you do.
Yeah.
You're only 33%.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So you're relatively young coach, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at like an MMA fighter, like for example, me, when was I 33% through my career? Guess what? When I was turning pro.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
yeah. I did like my amateur, which was about roughly 1/3 of my career,
Right.
and then the next 2/3 were pro. So it's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, and when I turned pro, I was like, yep, just at the beginning.
Yeah. No. Very
Yeah.
early in our careers.
Yeah, so very early in our career, so we can get better. So I often waver on like how to run practice and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, we kind of got to build this unit first and like get like a core system going, things of that nature. And it's back and forth, and it's like, okay, but I also coach the jiu-jitsu team, and like, all right, so I have you guys this time, and like, when can I get people on some individuals, stuff like that? Who do I do the individuals with? Like, okay, like I do them with this group of people who can make it because they can make it at these times, right? And like, lo and behold, those are also the pros. So it's like, okay, maybe it's a pro thing. Like, how do I segment it? Dude, there's just like so much to coaching that it's just insane. There's so much to coaching that is not knowing technique.
Oh yeah.
That is outside of knowing technique.
It's logistics.
Dude, logistics. Like, dude, like I hear about like some Division I wrestling programs where the head coach is not even at practice. like the head coach, his job is like he's like a CEO,
Yeah.
right? And I certainly don't want to be that for the MMA. Like I
Dude,
do
I've been
not.
forced into that recently, and thank God we have awesome coaches. Shout out to Josh Polans. I hit him a quick text. I was like, hey, this week in advance, go over this. This week in advance, go over this, and then this. And I know that he's going to kill it on those things, but it drives me crazy that I'm just stuck at home.
I just don't want to not like I love like I want to
there.
be a technique guy, and then like like I get upset because I can't teach the technique that I want because everybody sucks. Oh my god! And then like it's like okay, and it's like all right, well these 6 people could learn it, but these 18 need to learn the prerequisites first.
Right.
So
Yeah.
should I do these prerequisites? Because if I do these prerequisites, then these 18 can start to catch up, and it wouldn't hurt these 6 to re-go over
Right, yeah,
it.
it can't be too
But
good for
then
basics.
next time, now it's time to go over what I wanted to go over, and now there's a new group of like 5 who need the prerequisites. And I'm like, all right, like why don't you already have these prerequisites, right? You should be in the MMA techniques classes getting these prerequisites. Yeah, dude, it's just like crazy. And then it's like, all right, so when I run these team practices, should I be coaching them as like a giant team, right? Like how you would like a football team or a
Right.
baseball team? Or should the team just be a time where I'm at the practice and I've got you guys doing this because you need this, you need that. You guys doing that because you need this, you need this. Like, you know what I mean? More individual stuff at the practice.
Right.
And it's like a waiver back and forth. And it's just like, dude,
And also think about this, another wrinkle in it. You have people fighting at different times.
different times. That's the other thing. Like, at least if you're like if you're a wrestling coach or like you're a team sports coach, like the competitions are all together,
Everyone's
right? It's like,
peaking at the
oh,
same
we're
time.
wrestling Ohio State this weekend. Oh, we're wrestling Missouri this weekend. Oh, we have the Big Ten championships this weekend. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, yeah, it's like, all right, so we're all like peaking and
Right.
prepping at the same time. Where now it's like, oh, like Brittany's fight's in 4 weeks, and Lucas's fight is in 8, and Formon's in 12, and then some amateurs took some short notice fights and like stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
It's a lot.
nightmare. Now, with that said, I kind of want to like bounce off of you. You were talking about like what makes you a better corner than coach, which, by the way, I think you're a super high level coach. I'm not saying your coaching's not good, but I agree. I think your corner is
Well,
better.
I just think coaching is so broad. So
Right.
I think you can consider me for maybe the level we're currently at as a high level coach. As far as coaching and teaching technique goes. But as a coach, as far as managing a whole, like managing as in the term of managing progress, competitive
whole
progress, not managing like careers.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like I'm not a manager.
Right.
I'm talking about,
You're
like
managing
managing
their
the
acquisition of technique.
yes. I think there's a lot to be desired with my skills in that area.
Still think you're elite at it, but I agree. We're early in our career and we're going to only get better.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is I think I'm a little bit the reverse. Again, I think I'm very good at cornering. I could corner someone who I'd never met before, and I think that especially in between rounds, I would, I can offer valuable things. But I am significantly better at cornering if, one, I know that person, and two, like if we've not just have we worked together, but like we've developed a very specific language around those things. Like I am really big on codes, and I have to be speaking the same.
Should we?
We're not going to dive too far into that because I don't want to give too much stuff away.
Well, I don't think it's going to give too much stuff away. I think it's pretty apparent. But just to like touch on the differences between striking and grappling, like I don't have codes.
Right.
You have codes.
Yes.
I think that's a correct system. I don't think I need codes for grappling, whereas I see an ever pressing reason to need codes in striking, right? Because the knowledge of what the other person, there's so much less control, right? Naturally, we're in a striking position. There is lack of control.
And even when you get to a position of dominance in striking, it's so fleeting.
Dude, that's it. Fleeting.
Like
It's fleeting.
you can get top side on me and you can hold me there for 30 seconds while you slowly transition to the next position. If I start to get like if I get a dominant position in striking,
it's for that moment.
it's for a fraction of a second, so it's very different. And also I'm trying to think, I don't know how to say this without giving something very important away. It's really important that the opponent doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. And there's I mean, this should be apparent just with this. Like, there's a lot of things I can't say right now because opposing coaches might see that are like really important in how I corner, you know? And I think that kind of is, again, leaning back on the coaching, why I think I'm better, especially if I don't know that person, on the developmental side of things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because again, like, what am I gonna go? Just be like, hey, dude, try to be first. What's that doing? You know?
Yeah.
In between rounds, I can start to give someone a little bit better, you know.
Yeah, because
advice.
It's the same thing, right? Like, why can you not? Okay, if you're cornering somebody and you have not coached them, you can give them limited pre-fight advice.
Right.
But then after the first round, you can give them more advice in the corner because now you have seen them.
Exactly.
You have seen them. You have seen them against what is happening.
And also, I'm telling them things that the other guy's not listening to. You know?
Right.
So if I'm like, hey, every time this guy jabs, his hand's coming back to his waist, right? So I want you to, you know, catch and fire over the top because he won't be able to defend it. Like, if I'm screaming that in the middle of the fight, well, the other guy just heard that and he's going to start sharpening up his jabs. Whereas if I tell you in between, now it's a little secret, and now you can go and exploit that, you know?
Oh, I just had an idea I want to talk to you about after.
All right, cool.
Cool.
There's one other thing, and dude, I'll bleep this if you think this is giving away too much, but there have been times where, and it gets so much more complex than this, so I'm, like, not giving away certain things, but, like, there have been times in fights where I'll be like, hey, listen to the other corner, don't listen to me.
Oh, no, I think that's fine. I think we've talked about that on previous podcasts and how it's worked very well.
Especially with, again, there's something very specific that I want to be able to say that I really can't say. But like mixed with that, it's just game changer.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just some of the differences. In between the two things. Now, where do you want to go with this?
I don't know. I mean, we could talk about like kind of how we coach versus how I guess we kind of talked about that a little bit. I know what we could talk about. We could talk about the overlap between them. When do they overlap a lot? So in our case, right, the Venn diagram of coach and corner is almost always 100%, right? Like, we don't have a lot of fighters. I don't think any. There have been exceptions where you or I are in a corner with someone else, and usually it's someone else on our team. And right. Very rarely are we in a situation where we're cornering with like not our team. So again, that Venn diagram of coach and corner almost always full overlap. Maybe we could talk about sometimes when it doesn't fully overlap.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So, for example, let's say there's a fighter and they have a boxing coach, a Muay Thai coach, a wrestling coach, a jiu-jitsu coach, and like a head coach type of situation, right? And that's not super uncommon, right? Then they need to pick, hey, I need 2 or 3 of these guys in there, right? And maybe they want someone in there who's just like kind of a hype man. Maybe they want someone who's just like a training partner that they work with a lot, or I don't know, like in Mike Perry's case, his girlfriend, or like, you know, a strength and conditioning coach who's just like really amped up, right? Like, they might be in there, and now that overlap of who's doing the developmental work versus who's doing the performance work, you know, is very small or non-existent. You know what I mean? I guess what this all boils down to is, do you see value in that? Do you think that they should overlap? When should they? When should they not?
I think they should overlap. I can't see a reason why they shouldn't overlap.
I think they should overlap at least somewhat. I think at least one person who's in that corner should also be one of the head developmental people. But I don't,
100%.
But I don't think that they all need to. So, for example, I think it was reckless, and granted, he won this fight. But Mike Perry, he had that fight where he had his girlfriend in the corner, and that was it. Like, I don't think that's a good idea. Now, he won that fight, so, like, you know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think that, generally speaking, especially for the average person, that's a good idea. But I also think that just getting tied to having only the developmental coaches in the corner is, like, I don't think that's always the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if you have a coach who maybe doesn't communicate well in those situations or in that way, maybe having a teammate you work with a lot who does communicate those things well.
Okay,
or if you're the type of fighter who, like, between rounds, you need to get amped up, and you've got that one teammate who you know is going to amp you up, maybe you need that person as opposed to a coach like me where I'm not going to amp you up. I'm going to tell you very calmly, hey, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. You know, that's kind of my view on it. But I think you should have at least one person in that corner who is also one of the developmental coaches. What do you think?
Dude, I think definitely at least one. I'm just having trouble thinking, like, who's in there. Like, I just couldn't see like someone being in the corner who wasn't as part of the development.
All right, let me give you an example, right? Like, let's say that some kid shows up to our team, right? World champion kickboxer, like, I can help them with striking, but like they don't need it, right? And they are also the type of fighter who needs to get amped up between rounds. They're like, hey, I just want you to yell at me. I want you to get me amped up. I don't really care what you say. You just need to amp me up. They need you in the corner because when they hit the ground, they need to hear what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
They might not need me, especially if they're newer to our team, right? And they don't know all my systems and such. Like they might not need me. In that case, they might need someone who's just a teammate who, again, is just going to amp them up. Like I think that's like a pretty
But the teammate is is in the developmental.
to a degree, but they're also not like a coach. You know what I mean?
But they like know like what the fighter's working on. They know the game plan for the fight. They know like the fighter's strengths and weaknesses.
Let me give you a better example. It's not a teammate, right? Who just had David Goggins in the corner? Was it
Tony Ferguson?
Yeah, Tony Ferguson. And dude, honestly, for Tony Ferguson, that might be it's not the right move. But in this situation, let's say we had access to David Goggins, and this dude we knew was going to be all fired up. Throw him in there. He might be the right move.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That seems crazy to me. Like,
yeah, now I'm saying out loud, I'm like, dude, that sounds trash. I think that your developmental coaches should probably do their best to try to build those skills.
yeah.
But with that said, I think there are maybe some outlier situations where that's
now
possible.
where I could see this though is like being something is like maybe the head coach is not in the corner.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't see an issue with that. Like what I mean. Like if two other people, or if like all right, so you've got a coaching staff, for example. Like let's say like like I'm the head coach, right? And I lead the developmental through the camp and all that stuff, right? And it comes time for the fight, and we feel a need for it to be very important for you to be in there, and it'd be very important for Vince to be in there, and then there's no space for me, right? Like, yeah, that could work out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes
right.
sense.
Like if we're like, oh, like Vince is gonna corner this better,
right?
He like okay, like maybe like you're going against somebody who has a game that Vince knows better, right?
Yeah.
So he'll be able to offer better advice in those situations, right? Like what I mean? Like if you were going against like a leg locker, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, we need Vince in there,
right? Someone who only does barambolos,
yeah.
Throw Vince in.
So I could see that being a thing,
Yeah, that makes sense. What are your thoughts on this? Got me thinking about it. Non-combat sport coaches being put into a corner. So wives, girlfriends, David Goggins, your buddy from middle school.
And I'm not against it. It's like if you have the room for it, like what I mean. So for an example, in my corner, who were my three cornermen? As a pro, you get 3. Who were my 3?
Me, Warren, and AJ.
Yeah. Was AJ my coach?
Nah.
Nah. Did I need AJ to pump me up?
Nah,
dude. But like, it's just an extra spot.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought like, oh, maybe I could get him used to like these big shows. Right. It's like, you know what? If he makes it to Bellator, it would make it a lot less nerve-wracking for his first time if it wasn't his first time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. If he knew how backstage worked, if he knew how a fight week was with media and like getting your photos and the weigh-in process and the shuttle systems from the hotel to the arenas, what it was like to like be on the cage in the Bryce Jordan Center, like type of thing. I was
how
like,
many times you're gonna have to see your opponent before the fight?
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that amateur fighters oftentimes don't think about is they're like, you're gonna have to see this dude before the fight,
dude. Think about weigh-ins, dude. In weigh-ins, we stand with each other in line.
Dude, you remember when you fought Regman?
Yeah.
We literally had to go through like an hour-long line with him. We were chilling with him.
Yeah.
And Kurt Pellegrino, who is hilarious. Which we got lucky on that one.
We did.
Regman didn't really talk to us that much. He was like very nice.
He was very nice.
But he was just like really quiet. Dude, Kurt Pellegrino, he wanted to chat. And,
and it was awesome.
It was great.
Dude, he was so funny. Like, yeah.
But you could also have the opposite experience. You know what I mean? Like, you could have someone who's real standoffish and like real kind of like edgy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, you have to know that you're gonna have to deal with that situation.
Yeah.
And if you're like not a very seasoned fighter, like, or especially if you're like a brand new amateur, you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to see this dude. Maybe like the doctor's meeting or rules meeting or whatever. Like, and that's something that I think people don't think about as much.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. So like, yeah, like, you know, like, dude, like, what did I need more than you and Warren, right? Didn't need. It was like, all right, I only needed two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, whatever. It's like, I got this third spot. Like, how can we use it?
Dude, okay, I just thought of this too. Here's an example of it not working out. Let's say that I decided I'm gonna dust it off, right? I'm gonna heal this bad boy up, and I'm gonna take
Step back in.
one more fight, right? Even if it was a stand up fight, let's say I was like, hey, I'm gonna take a Muay Thai fight, right?
Yeah.
You know who I'd want in my corner?
Me.
You. It could be a boxing match. It could be a Muay Thai fight, kickboxing, whatever.
Yeah.
You're in my corner, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Like, and that's a good example because I was like, oh, I want someone who's like real technical and like, you know, knows this sport better than I do. And I'm like, maybe I don't feel that way because you would be like the number one corner I want.
No, dude. Well, I also think like you've cornered with me so much, and I've cornered you in like weird things like golf. Like,
Dude, yes, yes. I forgot about that, dude.
What is it like? So like jujitsu, obviously, I've cornered you in that. Like
we
golf.
were at Top Golf,
Yeah,
and like Tanner, like you know, has played golf like a whole bunch, and he's like, "Oh, you have to like keep this angle and do this," and he's giving me like real technical advice, and it was not working. I was not doing very well.
Not going well.
And Mike just goes, "Hey, Will, make it bend," and dude, I started crushing him.
Dude, you were blasting them straight ropes, just firing them. Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, and I do think like, and you've also cornered with me enough to know that like, you know, like, okay, so like I'm not like close to your level on like striking knowledge and understanding of what's happening like in that time, but there is in almost every fight when we're cornering somebody, like I don't even know your codes.
Yeah,
you know? But I'm like, Will, have him do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but every fight,
and I'll
fight,
translate it. Yeah,
yeah, every fight, like I see an opening. I see.
Oh yeah,
the
you
openings.
see stand-up stuff very well, and again, it goes back to your skill of being able to boil it down. So like, you know, maybe if I was fighting someone, you'd be like, hey, you're countering too much on their combinations. You need to interrupt. And I'd be like, oh, that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
Like something simple like that.
I could definitely provide value.
I might not be able to see, you know, when I'm in there.
Also, it's just like the look from the others from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love it when people have a realization of that. Not saying that she hadn't had a realization of it earlier, but we were working on a specific technique with Brittany. We're spending like a month on it, and she was in like a position, and like I just like yelled like one thing. I was like, roll, and like you could tell like there was no way like she was thinking of it, and she just like did it, and like the technique happened inside of the roll. And she was like, holy shit. And then she was like, I didn't even know you could do it there. And I was like, yeah, you did. We did this. It's like, oh yeah. I was like, you just couldn't see it the way I was seeing it. You know, you're in there. Yep. I'm over here. I'm like, that's open. You can't see that it's open.
And that actually, I think, connects back to another overlap between the cornering and the coaching is that like you've coached Brittany for so long and you've done such a good job of it that she trusts you to that level that when you say go, she's just going to hit it. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important too.
That's where the coaching and cornering, the being part of the development is the trust of it, right? And that's what I was saying, like, you know what I mean? Like the calming effect that I imagine my style of coaching brings when instruction is being given is part of the developmental process because there has been a level of belief built. Like I wanted to say trust, but like it's like
it's belief too.
Right? You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, like trust has to do, in my opinion, like if you're saying trust in this situation, you're thinking of my intentions.
Right.
You're like, oh, I have good intentions for you. Like I'm not trying to sabotage you.
Right.
I'm not trying to lead you astray. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or anything like that. Belief is you knowing I know what I'm doing.
Right. You're giving
that I'm giving the correct call.
Yeah. That's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Man, I'm running through my head now. I'm thinking about like other things we could talk about, and to be honest with you, the only other things I have to talk about are like very
specific things. That's where I started
and
getting
like
into
proprietary things that
That's where I started getting into. I was like, yeah, dude, I want to talk about this, and that, but like, man, I don't want to like
give away a lot of secret sauce.
Give away any of the secret sauce, and like, especially since I'm still figuring out the recipe.
Yeah. Well, also like there's certain like the things that we're discussing, we're like really far ahead of right now, and in like 5 years it won't be like that. People will start to
it'll be standard practice,
right? And like
so we have to find ways to stay ahead,
right? But at the same time, I want those 5 years to figure out whatever the next piece is. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything that's gonna
Well, that's like the thing they say about like Gordon Ryan. You know, it's like almost inarguable. He's like the greatest no-gi grappler of all time.
right.
But they're like, dude, he like sells all his stuff, right?
Right.
He's got an instructional on everything he does.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know what I mean? Like, he'll win a match, pull out an envelope that he gave to somebody before the match, open it. It was what he said he was going to do
Right.
in the match. And then here goes a coupon code for my instructional that drops
Yeah.
right now on that technique
Yeah.
as well. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, you're selling all your techniques. Like, you're selling all your secrets. And he's like, by the time I give them to you, I'm on to the next thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I ain't giving them to you until I got the next thing
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
You know, type of thing. So, I don't know. Good stuff, fun stuff. That's what really motivates me as a coach, too, though, is like,
Improving.
it's like, you know, and like doing things our way.
Yes. Yes.
You know, like people are like, oh, well, that's not how, you know, this gym does it or that gym does it. And even proven gyms, right? Like, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, like, you know, a really great proven gym like ATT, right? Like, obviously, you know, and I don't even know how they do things.
Right.
But, right, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to do it our way, you know? And, like, that's the fun of it is, like, figuring out the puzzle for us. So, you know what it is? We're drawing our own picture, right? I'm not trying to trace your stuff. You know what I mean? I'm drawing my own thing here, you know?
Dude, and that's like what's so cool about our job is like, all right, there's 2 quotes that popped in my mind about this. All right. One is and I don't know who said this, but it's better to lose at the right game than win the wrong game. And I think that's kind of like pertinent there is like you and I have found our game. You know what I mean? And so like that's why it's so important to do it like our way. And especially like, dude, we've done it our life. Like, this is our job. This is literally all we do.
Yeah.
And so, like, why wouldn't we do it our way? The other thing that pops into my head and, like, what gives me confidence in the fact that, like, we do certain things differently from proven gyms, and I want to say this is a Jerry Garcia quote, is don't be the best, be the only.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, dude, if we do things our way, and we're the only ones to do it, by definition, we're the best. We're also the worst, but we're the we're the best at doing that, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's super cool.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm not trying to, like, and like, I mean, like, as we, oh, was that this episode? Did we talk about, like, I was like, you're a creator, I'm a borrower?
Might have been I mean,
no, that had to be this episode.
If you can't tell from our outfits, we recorded these back to back.
We recorded an episode right before this. But no, I think that was it, because why would we be talking about that with injuries?
Yeah,
it had to be this episode. It had to be this episode. So yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not to say that I won't borrow things, but like, I borrow them and I put them into, like, you know, my own thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Into our system, into our structure.
And that's part of it is like, I want it to be like, I don't want to just like steal someone's structure. Like, I want it to be my own thing, but I'm also not trying to start from the ground up, right? You know what I mean? I want to stand on their shoulders.
Yeah, you know? For sure. The other thing is if you take someone else's ideas, techniques, structure, whatever, and you try to implement it into your style, like your style of coaching might not be best in that structure. So like, I know some people, like, I'm a very laid back coach. Like, very rarely am I yelling at our guys. Very rarely am I like upset at all. Like, you know, I'm very laid back. And I've had other coaches be like, oh, you need to be doing this in this situation. I'm like, no, I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I know how I do things. And if I were to take a specific like cornering technique or whatever from someone who isn't like me, it's not going to work coming from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I could write out my whole curriculum, go give it to another coach, and they'll never teach it like me.
Right. Yeah.
Because like, that's my stuff. Like, there's details I know that only I'm going to get out right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, like my disposition as a person is what makes this system work with me. You know?
Right.
And I think that you and I have done a really good job of like making that happen, not just in coaching, but also in the corner.
Yeah, definitely in the corner. Cool. Yeah, man. I mean, I think that really covers everything I wanted to talk about on this.
Oh, dude, I've been grasping at straws for the whole second half of this pod. I got nothing else to say that's not super secret.
Well, that's a wrap. So here goes another episode of Listen to Your Coaches, and we will catch you guys next time.